Hello and welcome. My name is Sawab Ahmed, and I am a Senior Partner Solutions Architect for VMware Cloud and AWS based in Melbourne, Australia. In this demo, we are going to talk about AWS Client VPN, and we will see how we can use AWS Client VPN to access workloads running on VMware Cloud and AWS directly from our laptop. So here is the lab setup that I have. On the left hand side, you can see the end user device, which is my laptop. And we will access the AWS VPC running on customer's AWS account over the internet. We will install and configure the AWS Client VPN on the same VPC. This VPC is also the attached VPC to VMware Cloud on AWS SDDC. As you can see in the diagram, there is already a network connectivity over the ENI from the attached VPC to VMware Cloud on AWS SDDC. So once we install and configure the client VPN, we would then need to add the routes for the network segments of VMware Cloud and AWS SDDCs into the client VPN configuration. We will also need to set firewall rules on the compute gateway to allow traffic over the VPC interface from the attached VPC to the workloads running on VMware Cloud on AWS. So with that, let's get started and see that live in action. So this is my lab environment. As you can see, we have a test software-defined data center running here, and we have just one host in this software-defined data center with this much of CPU, memory, and storage. And if we open the vCenter, you see that there are some VMs running in there. So there's a Windows VM running here. So we will try to access this VM after setting up client VPN and access this from our laptop. Let's go ahead and ping this VM and see if we are able to reach the VM. As you can see, it's not reachable. Let's go to the NSX manager and take a look at the firewall rules. You can see that I have added a firewall rule here for inbound access to the VM, which is running on my vCenter server. I have added this firewall rule over the VPC interface and have added specific protocols or services to be allowed over this VPC interface. Now, if we head over to the networking tab and go to segments, you'll see there are two segments. One is the default and the other one is the segment which I created. And my VM is currently residing on this segment, and hence it has the IP address of this range, which is 192.168.150.3. And if I now go back to NSX Manager, you'll see that the attached VPC that we were talking about is this one. As you can see, it's connected. It's ending with 2D25. If we head over to the AWS console, we will see that this is the VPC. So this software-defined data center is running on Sydney region, and hence this VPC is also in Sydney. Let's now head over to the AWS console, and under VPC, you'll see client VPN endpoints. So here is where we need to create our client VPN endpoint. I've already created one, but I'll show you the steps to create it. So if you click on create client VPN, you just give it a name, description. This CIDR range should be anything which is different from the target CIDR range of the attached VPC. And we'll also need to create some certificates for the server side and the client side, right? So I'll show that in a minute. And we'll have to select use mutual authentication, and then you select the server certificate here, and you'll have to select the client certificate here. And once you do that, you may choose to enable split tunnel and then hit on create client VPN endpoint, and then you'll get this client VPN endpoint created. So once the client VPN endpoint is created, you'll have to then go ahead and associate this client VPN with a target network. This target network would be nothing but your subnet which is on this VPC. So if I click on associate target network here, you can see that I can see my attached VPC here, or the VPC where I've created this client VPN on, and then you can also attach all the subnets that belong to this VPC. And once you associate it, you will see it up here under associated networks. You'll also need to add some authorization rules here in order to authorize the VPC to have access to the specific subnets. So here I have authorized internet access as well as access to the subnet which is on my NSX network segment inside the VMware Cloud AWS SDDC. You'll also need to add the routing table here and add routes to the internet as well as the subnet on my VMware Cloud AWS SDDC. Okay, so now let's head over to the AWS documentation and see what needs to be done. Right, so as I mentioned, we need to create the SSL certificates before we can actually connect using the client VPN. So the first step is to create the client server and the client SSL certificates, and we'll use mutual authentication in this case. So if you head over to this documentation here, it gives you a step-by-step documentation of how to actually create those certificates. So once you run through all these steps, you'll get a certificate downloaded to your laptop. So these are the files which are downloaded when you run those commands. And after that, what you need to do is upload the certificate and the key file to the AWS Certificate Manager. So you'd run these commands here to upload the server certificate and key file, and you can do the same for the client as well. The client is optional, but it's recommended if you want to do it, go ahead and do that as well. Right, so once you run these commands here, if I go to the AWS Certificate Manager, you'll see that these certificates are already uploaded here. Right, as you can see, you have the server and you have the client. So now let's head back to the client VPN configuration. Then we also need to check the security groups if you want to allow internet access outbound. So if you head over to the security group and check the outbound rules, I've already added this rule here to allow outbound access to the internet. Alright, so that's pretty much everything we need to configure on the client VPN configuration. Right, then now we will have to download the client file to be able to use it on the client side. So I'll go ahead and click on download client configuration here, and once I download this, it will be downloaded on to my laptop. Right, if I open this file initially, you will see that there are some contents already populated here, but you would not have this certificate section. So the way to get this populated here is the files that we got downloaded earlier when we run those commands. We'll have to use the client side certificate and the client side key. So if I open these two files here, you'll see that this is the certificate file and this is the key file. So I copy all these contents from top to bottom, and I create a certificate section here, and I paste everything inside the certificate section. Right, I do the same thing for the key file for the client. I click and I copy the entire contents of this file, and I create a key section, and then I paste everything inside this key section. And then you go ahead and save this file. Right, so once that is saved, and next step is to open the AWS Client VPN. Right, so this is the software which is already downloaded from AWS download page. So once you open this, you say File, Manage Profiles, and you'll have to add a profile. Right, so I've already browsed the file which I saved on here. Right, and then I have added it under my profile here. Right, so once you do that, you will see that it's already added here, and then you can see it here. So next step is to connect to this VPN. Right, so it looks like it's connected now. So as you can see, we already had a VM running inside VMware Cloud on AWS SDDC. So the IP address of this VM is 192.168.150.3. So let me see if I can go ahead and ping this now. Okay, so I'll try to ping this IP now. Great, okay, looks like that it's able to ping this IP address from my laptop now. Okay, so the reason it's able to ping this IP is because I have set a firewall rule on the NSX manager to allow traffic from this VPC, which is attached VPC, over the VPC interface. So let's quickly check if we are able to RDP or do a remote desktop into this VM. Okay, so we'll open the remote desktop here, and I've already saved this configuration, so I'm just clicking on here to see if we can connect. Excellent. So we are able to connect to this VM from my laptop directly. And just to verify, this is the IP address of the VM that we were pinging. Right, so let me just try to write something in here. Okay, client VPN test, and save this file. Okay, so let's now log out from here. So this is the VM, which is the VM running on within the VMware Cloud AWS SDDC. As you can see here, this is the VM. If you launch the web console and try to access the same VM from here, right? This is the same VM that I've just written a file into, right? So that's all for uh, the testing, and hope this was informative for you. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. And thank you for watching.